The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christi, Reece, and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle.
Hi everyone, I'm your host Ian Skrine, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by Karen Sadler, a realtor with the Christi Reece Group, and Christina Sadler, also a realtor with the Christi Reece Group. So thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to jump into some questions to kind of help basic buyers and first-time homeowners really understand where they're at in the market, how to get into the market, maybe some things to think about before entering the market. And so I felt like starting with buying is the best way to start because everybody's got to start somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so what's the difference between being pre-qualified and being pre-approved, and why does that difference matter?
So I actually just experienced that this morning. Pre-qualification is really the basic preliminary stuff, not diving in really deeply. You may have things that you need to repair in your credit or something that is in the process that hasn't fallen off the back end to give you clear to go yet. And that would be in the pre-qualification versus the pre-approval. They've dived in deeper, had a look at all that stuff, and it's all been cleaned up. So I had one this morning. They have a little blemish. I have the listing agent. I'm the listing agent on it. The buyer brought an offer and then realized they had a little thing there that might take 60 days to get off their report. So they have to pull their offer back and hold off a second.
And so a buyer should contact an agent who will then help direct them to a lender in order to start that pre-qualification, in order to really see what is available to them and where to really look without jumping into something that maybe is not possible for them, right?
Yeah, I feel like most buyers start with a real estate agent first, who then makes recommendations of their trusted lending partners. And there's a lot of great ones in the Valley, but obviously being in the industry as long as we have the people that we work with all the time. And knowing what the first steps are, if there are blemishes, like you said, on people's ability to be able to purchase right away. I mean, what a downer to think you're able to do something and then get a swift kick to the knee, so good to start there first.
Yeah, and I always ask for pre-approval letter when I receive an offer. I don't ask for a pre-qualification. And if I get a pre-qualification, I'm going to call that lender.
Right.
And say, I know you can't give me all the personal stuff, but where are you in that? Is this something that you're confident is going through and you're just, handing that out as the initial step, or are you really just getting started? So.
Right. All right, so walk us through some of the hidden or surprising costs of home ownership that buyers consistently underestimate. I know I'm a recent home buyer and previously renting, and so there's some things where rentals you don't have to take care of, and that's not your responsibility. But then when it flips to home ownership, I think there's a lot of things that people underestimate or maybe overlook because the excitement of home buying is there. But what are some of those things that maybe people do underestimate that they should pay more attention to, or at least have understanding of before going into that?
Cost of repairs. I mean, people don't realize what it costs if your swamp cooler goes out or your water heater goes out. First of all, it's 3:00 in the morning. It's not a reasonable time that any of that stuff happens, but you don't know until you're in the middle of it. So I think if I would tell Christina from however many years ago when I bought my first house, what would be really great advice would put money aside for that in advance. Maybe you don't know necessarily what that's going to be allocated towards at the time, but just having some sort of a budgetary plan so that when your water heater goes out at 3 a.m., you're not like, in addition to the stress of that, trying to go, where do the funds come from at that point?
Mm-hmm. And then also some things that are there every day, not necessarily repairs. So you're renting, let's say, and everything is basically encompassed into that rental cost, HOA dues, things like that. And now suddenly you've got your own monthly HOA dues that you have to pay for, and could be anywhere from $250 a year to $400 a month,
Right.
or more. So it's good to take that into consideration. That gets folded into, your ability to buy at a higher purchase price. When you've got a $400 a month HOA fee, that cuts back a lot, your buying power.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. What are some red flags in listings that you guys either come across or help your buyers walk through that maybe an experienced buyer would notice, but a first-time home buyer may overlook or not see as so much of a problem in the listing?
So I think about things like solar leases, own solar. Is it lease to own? Is it actually yours when you're done paying it off? Or do you re-up a lease? Because sometimes they're 20-year leases and it starts all over again. You never own it and you're stuck with this payment forever. And a lot of people that got solar on their houses got sucked into an astronomical monthly fee, and puts them in a really difficult position to be able to sell. Some people who are first-time home buyers might not recognize words like, contingency to sell, right? Maybe the seller has to find a replacement property in order to be able to sell the home that they currently have. So you have to navigate all of that timing for both sides of the parties too. And sometimes there's a domino effect where there's multiple houses in the background that are all having to sell before the next one can close. Couple.
Totally. And I think too, speaking to HOAs specifically, we see special assessments in certain areas that, in our mind we have HOA dues, this is my monthly obligation, but it expands so much more beyond that depending on what the HOA covers, how old is the neighborhood that you're buying into, and what type of potential fluctuation in dues there are. I mean, we do the best that we can to find the information that's available to us at that time, but just being mindful, if you're buying a townhome that's connected to others in the neighborhood, there's probably going to be a special assessment at some point for roof replacement, right? And if you don't have the experience to look at that situation and go, hey, this is something we should talk about now, that's a sticker shock for people down the road.
And speaking of those HOA fees, I mean, get in not just to that, but your covenants and your restrictions.
Totally.
What is actually covered? What is the HOA going to cover? What is, allowed? People come in and we've got 3 dogs, and I'm sorry, they only allow 2. There's a lot of things that you really want to look deeply into, because once you're invested and you have an offer down and money down, and then you have to back out, you've already paid for an inspection, but you've got 3 dogs and you can only have 2. You got to pay attention to all that stuff.
And what falls under your responsibility as a homeowner that maybe you thought or would assume was covered by the HOA, like
right.
exterior maintenance or, grass, cutting grass, pulling weeds, stuff like that. That's something that I've done a lot of research on too, is just figuring out what our HOA holds and maintains versus what I need to. And that's
Right.
It's been interesting.
Yeah, the fence between you and your neighbor is not looking so good. Whose responsibility is that?
Right.
Well, we've tried to fight that guy for years. Right. There's a lot of stuff.
All right, so let's transition now to selling your home. So you've bought your home, you've been in it for a good amount of time, now you're looking to sell. A lot of people look at where they're at and say, I'm going to do paint, new floors, landscaping, updates, stuff like that. What is the true return on investment on some of those most common pre-listing improvements, and what are some that people should pay more attention to than others?
I think that generally speaking, paint and flooring is probably the biggest piece where we say this is a great way to make your property feel newer and fresher in preparation for listing. I also think that replacing your garage door is a really fantastic way to improve curb appeal if you feel like that needs a little bit of love. And I think one conversation that can be super difficult to have with sellers is that your dollar-to-dollar investment in the improvements that you make isn't always seen and recaptured on the other side. And in our current market, with the inventory levels that we have, it's really critical that sellers make sure we're dialed into the best that we can from the very beginning, because there's a lot to look at, and there hasn't always been that level of inventory historically.
Yeah, and I think that, we could have, over time, depending on where we were in our market, we could have answered that a lot of different ways.
Totally.
But right now, I think the most important thing is that when somebody walks into your home, you don't want them to turn around and walk out.
Right.
So that first impression, that curb appeal on the front, like she's talking about with the garage door, you walk in and, they took all their stuff off the walls and there's scrapes in the paint and everything. You immediately see something that's a little run down and maybe wasn't respected and cared for. So then that's just surface stuff. So what's underneath? If you've got, you need a furnace or, some other big ticket item, if the house looks really good when you walk in, you almost like secure some interest, and the other stuff you can navigate through inspection. So
people are more likely to look at that stuff longer or, more so down the road than coming up, to the front of the house and being like, wow, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here.
Yeah, it's got to feel
and
good.
And a new heater and a new, stuff like that.
It's got to feel good when you walk in.
It changes the lens that you look at it through and what you're willing to be a little bit more tolerant of from the beginning. And
could really set your home, apart from a very comparable home, right down the street or in the same neighborhood that, if you've got that that house, that those first impression things really dialed in and the other house doesn't, even though you guys may have some same underlying problems, it may lead a buyer to really be more interested in yours because from the front, it looks like there was less work to do than the other one.
Right. And as an agent, it makes a lot of sense when your buyer's looking at a house and there's one right down the street that's $30,000 cheaper. I mean, do a preview.
Right.
Go check it out and find out why there's such a discrepancy. And you walk in and you go, oh, right? Now you can go and talk to your client and shed some light.
Yeah. So now that that you're selling your house, it's been on the market, and you've received an offer. How should a seller weigh a higher offer with contingencies, like you've mentioned, against a lower clean cash offer? What kind of discussion does that open up to? And in your opinion, where would you direct your client to go?
So contingencies are such a normal part of our market right now, and I don't think it's always been quite as commonplace as it is. An offer is a good offer. At least there's a conversation on the table to be had. However, the contingent sale of a property is the one thing that we don't have control over. So if there is an opportunity for meeting in the middle with a cash offer, I mean, that is 100% of the time my recommendation to my sellers. The other piece of it is, while it's normal, it's stressful, and it's hard not to have control over somebody's ability to be able to purchase. There's a lot of emotions that go into a sale and a purchase, and then you run those concurrently with one another. It can be challenging. So I would say cash always first if you can come to an agreement and the numbers make sense.
And on the same side of that, I mean, I agree with you, Christina. There are always those cases that are a little bit different. You've got a seller who has a home to find that they don't have yet. They're not in a rush. They want to make the graduation for their grandkids before they move, and that's a month and a half away. They want to take their time. So if they have an offer that's $20,000 higher and is going to give them 60 days that they really need.
True.
So it may work more in their favor than it works against them.
Right.
Well, exactly. $20,000 over 2 months. I mean, how much is that cash offer? How much less is it versus waiting 2 months to get another $20,000?
Right.
So I think you really have to look at each case by case.
And really looking at your situation and seeing what you need out of it, or
what's your time frame, what makes sense for you.
Right. And the obvious things are going to be, you're going to have an appraisal if you have a loan versus cash, always you're going to, well, not always, but usually if you're doing it right, you should have an inspection. But really the appraisal is the thing that you're getting rid of. But if you've done your homework and you've priced that property right, you shouldn't have a problem with your appraisal. If you do it and you present it to your seller and they want to list at a higher price, and you're telling them, well, look, here's what's on the market right now. Here's your competition. Here is what is under contract right now. That's going to be your comps. Mm-hmm. And then these are the solds that are going to be a little older by the time we get closed. But let's look at these things. And now you explain to me why you think your house should be $40,000 higher.
Right.
So then we have to worry about appraisal. So those conversations all come in together. And usually we're pretty good at navigating that and getting everybody where they should be.
And that's a great segue to our next one. So when, looking at the psychology behind pricing, I feel like, at least working in the office and being in the real estate industry, and you guys hear it probably more often than I do, but people always ask, like, why would you price it that way? What's the psychology behind pricing it either, just below or just above, or even coming out at a round number, $499 versus $500,000? Why do realtors, I think the consumers would try to understand why is that a strategy versus just setting it at $500,000?
So pricing strategy, my personal favorite is pricing under market value, just a touch, so that we can get as much buzz and as many eyeballs on your property as possible. That is the best way that we know how to ideally generate multiple offers. And I think for me, a big piece of negotiation is when both people feel like they're winning a little bit, it makes the overall real estate experience super positive. So I think that pricing strategy, especially in our current market with the level of inventory that we have, it's a good way to stand out and a good way to hopefully have people feel like they're walking away with a little bit of a win in their pocket.
Yeah, and if you price slightly under, if the buyer is being represented by an agent who knows our market and is doing her homework or his homework, they're going to know it's slightly under, and they're going to tell you this is a good deal. Mm-hmm. And then if you get multiple offer situation, you've got some wiggle room there to actually come in a little higher if you depending on how badly you want that property.
Right.
a little under the price, it attracts a lot of attention. It doesn't mean that you're doing a disservice to your seller and that you're going to sell it for less, right? So
yeah, it's easier to walk it up than to take it back down.
Right.
You know, I think a lot of times, you know, people are like, well, let's just go for the high dollar and see what we can get. But then, you know, the market flips and that ends up sitting on the market for, you know, 3 months, and then you're doing a price reduction, and now that sets a different tone than if you were to price under and then it says, yeah, we've got 4 different offers that we can look at and really use to our advantage.
Right.
yeah, and you know, we're looking right now, as Christina just mentioned, with the amount of properties we have on the market right now. We're at what, 805 or something like that, highest I've ever seen since I've been doing this. There again, you know, we're about 5 months worth of inventory. We're getting very close to it being a buyer's market, and it's been a seller's market since I started here. That makes buyers feel like they can come in a little lower, wait a little longer, be a little pickier, more to choose from, the whole 9 yards. So in, you know, giving advice to our sellers, we need to make sure that they know by us presenting the clear data, right? We need to actually bring a list of properties of what's active, what's pending, and what has sold. Not just, oh, let's look at some property resource thing online and it tells us it's worth this, so that's what we're going to do.
Right.
You know, you got to back it up, because they don't really know. They haven't been in the house. They haven't seen the improvements when they write up those tools. So, you know, you have to be even more so diligent about knowing what you're talking about and presenting to your seller in this market.
And how nice is it too, I feel like, and I'm sure you would echo this, when we go to listing appointments and have conversations about pricing strategies and we're talking through comps, 75% of the time the houses we're talking about, we've been in. So the way that we can tell people, look, this is how your property stacks up against this one. These are the standout features, or maybe where this one falls a little bit short of yours.
Right.
So the pricing strategy and the advice that we're giving is boots on the ground. We've been there, we've seen it kind of experience. So that's super helpful too.
And I think a lot of agents it's difficult for some to point out some things that might be a challenge for property, because you just want to win the listing, right? And you want the seller to feel great about you. And I think it's really important to say, here are the things that might be a challenge in selling your property, right? You back up against this road. There's this industrial business right out your backyard. I mean, we have to bring those things into consideration when we pull them alongside other comps. Well, why is that one $30,000 more than mine? Well, you're right alongside the highway. This one's 4 blocks in. I mean, there's, you know, you can't be afraid to share that stuff.
Right. And being honest with your sellers up front allows for a better transaction, because they already know what may come up in an offer, and they may say like, yeah, we discussed that beforehand, versus being like, where was that discussion, you know, a month ago when we listed the house?
Yeah,
so,
be proactive.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you want to know that when you're looking across from your agent, well, I don't always like all the information that she shares with me, but at least she shares the truth with me, right?
Right.
I mean, or he.
All right. So once again, great navigation into our next
Happy to help.
topic here. So we've covered buying and selling. So let's kind of talk more the broader, you know, topic here, the market itself, and kind of what comes up during the process of, you know, a home goes under contract and now we're waiting to get to the finish line and to close. How should buyers think about time in the market versus timing the market? I think a lot of times, you know, people have the feeling like I don't have enough money for a down payment, or the interest rate is too high for me right now, or, you know, there's just not a house out there that I'm looking, you know, that I'm ready to go for, versus just finding one that maybe doesn't check all the boxes but checks enough, and really starting to build that equity versus waiting for the perfect one to drop.
I mean, ultimately, the longer you wait, you're sacrificing appreciation in your investment. And if you're continuing to be a renter, you're doing something great for somebody else, but it's not you.
Right.
And you know, I think with rates where we're at, that can be kind of a difficult conversation, because it's a challenge for people. They're higher, and, you know, for people that have been watching the market since our beautiful little COVID interest rates, you know, hoping that those come back. I think that so much of buyer psychology in this segment of deciding whether or not to jump in the market is, we should say thank you for the blip in the matrix that we had when we had those interest rates, and understand that that's probably not anything we'll ever see again.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
We can be grateful for it and then wave by in the mirror because it's not coming back, you know? So yeah, I mean, you're sacrificing equity, and, you know, interest rates, they change, and you can always refinance, and, you know, there's options. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I think something that's really important, you know, not even right down to the let's purchase, meaning get into the market, was start educating yourself. I mean, get yourself connected with a strong lender. You don't have to lock in a rate yet, and get yourself connected with a really good agent. because they're going to help you navigate all those things that affect you. You know, sometimes we hyper focus about the money for the down payment, right? And there's a million programs out there with different lenders, or maybe, you know, all you're worried about is the interest rate. And well, did you know you could do a buy down? You know, you could do this, or there's different ways that we can navigate through a transaction that can help you get started initially. And like we said, you know, you can refinance in the future and change those things up. So, I mean, if you find everything you want right now and the interest rate isn't perfect for you, as long as you're not putting yourself beyond the ledge that you can monthly, you know, accommodate, I say get in, educate yourself and get going. Because I mean, I have never seen the market go backwards since I started here in 2017. So prices have always gone up. Equity's always grown.
And like you said, getting in the market, maybe not so much buying a house right then, but just like you said, getting connected with somebody, or, you know, an agent, a lender that is in the market every day and is watching those trends and really understanding, you know, how the market is looking, so that when the time comes, they know your situation, they know what you're looking to pay, they know how much you can, you know, you're approved for. And when that time comes and they say, hey, now's a good time to move, you know, a lot of your ability is going to be utilized. And so let's get you in, let's start looking at properties and see what's out there, versus just coming in cold and really being like, all right, where do we go? And it's like, well, we've got some leg room to do before we're ready.
And if you're building that relationship, partnering with that realtor for a month, 6 months, a year, imagine the confidence you have in watching the trends and learning about our market specifically, lending specifically, things that change, things that go up, things that go down. Oh, wow, this other thing kind of stays even keel the whole time. Right. And I was making this a super big deal, right? So, I mean, I just think that education is priceless. Just really build your confidence.
For sure. When does it make sense to buy down points on your loan versus taking the higher rate and refinancing later? We've kind of talked about that just a little bit, but let's kind of go into it a little bit deeper. Maybe explain what buying down a point means versus, you know, taking the higher rate and refinancing.
Yeah. So when we ask for seller concessions, those can typically be used in different ways. It can either be used for the rate buy down that you're talking about, or to go towards buyer's closing costs. So I think first and foremost, evaluating what type of liquidity you have to be able to pay for your own closing costs versus applying that towards a buy down. Step one, super important conversation to have with your lender and with your agent. I think depending on where rates are at the moment is ultimately going to determine whether or not it makes sense to take that as a buy down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think here again, the importance of having an incredible lender, because you may be thinking, I'm buying down this rate. Well, how much are you putting up to buy down that rate, and how long is it going to take to recoup that money? Whereas your lender might tell you, this is a better program for you with the amount of money you're putting down, or maybe with you have to furnish a house, you don't have anything, so you need a little bit of extra cash. So maybe you need to put less money down, and you're worried about the mortgage insurance monthly. Well, that's only $18, you know, versus putting less money down. There's just lender. Rely on their expertise and make sure that you have a really good one who has a lot of experience and knows the market really well, because those options can make or break it.
Yeah, I just had a friend I was talking to earlier that their discussions with their lender was, rather than buying down a point, they needed to furnish the house. And so they went with, you know, just take the higher interest rate right now. You can refinance later, but take that extra cash that you're going to save and buy furnishings for your home and get that where you need it to. And then we can look down the road and see where we can refinance.
Well, and remember with the last house that I owned, I was super hesitant to not put 20% down to try to avoid that mortgage insurance. But with that particular property, that was one that I would call like kind of distressed almost. It was in rough shape before. And when we look at mortgage insurance, I would say first and foremost, it's often less money than people realize. I think people hear that and go, oh my gosh, this is going to tank me potentially.
Right.
But when we consider mortgage insurance and how you can also have that dropped off of your loan, part of that equation is equity gain over time. So typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's when you pay 80% of that loan, the bank will drop off your mortgage insurance after a certain amount of time. Versus if you have an equity gain that surpasses that amount, you can have an appraisal done and refinance out of your mortgage insurance. And I don't think that's something that's talked about a whole lot. Mine was $180 or something like that. And with an appraisal and the equity gain that I had, I was able to have that removed from my loan. So lender.
and again, you know, that's on you, right?
Totally.
The mortgage company's not going to call you up and go, hey, we can take $180 off your payment.
You look like you'd like a discount.
Yeah, that you have to pay attention to where you are, your 80-20 ratio, and you have to make that call yourself to get that done. So.
Right. When we talk about negotiations for inspections, how should a buyer approach inspection negotiations? I think a lot of times, when an inspection negotiation comes up, a lot of people get, I don't think cold feet is the word, but I think a lot of people get intimidated and are concerned about what that means. But those can come in forms of like repair credits, price reductions, or repairs done by the seller, either pre-closing or post-closing. So how should a buyer approach an inspection negotiation like that?
I think that also is going to vary as far as, the ability of the buyer to put money up front, needing it all to be wrapped in as a nice little package and completed for them before closing. Do we have time to go ahead and get some bids out there and then present those to the seller where proceeds, the money comes out of proceeds and pays that contractor directly either after closing or slightly before closing, and then the buyer feels that they have skin in the game overseeing that versus, you throw this list out there and you have no control over who the seller is hiring. Right? They might be getting their cousin. I don't know. They were going to be a licensed electrician. They didn't quite make it, but they were going to be there. Who's getting it done? I think the more control you can have over the process and understanding what's being done on what's going to be your home is better. If you can get cash from the seller to pay for it and then oversee it, but then again, be due diligent about getting those bids. Mm-hmm. Just present those, title company, cut the check, get it done.
Right.
Yeah, I think with inspection, it's an interesting piece of the transaction because it's the buyer's opportunity to make asks, and we don't have a lot of those. So there's a balance between, I think sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is, this is my only time to ask, so I'm going to ask for all of it. And then being a seller on the receiving end of that and going, holy cow, like this is a ton of work, and just being strategic in what you ask for and how you articulate it is huge. And, I think while I tell my clients, ask for whatever you want, I'm in support of you, I think having strategy behind that and not just slapping people with a huge list that's probably has a lower likelihood of being accomplished when you approach it that way is super critical to that as well.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll receive an inspection objection from somebody and it's got, 30 items on it. Yeah. And 12 of them in a row are individually itemized electrical things. I mean, why don't you just say seller will hire a licensed electrician to complete the following? Yeah. And then just do the list and make it look like one request instead of 12. Mm-hmm. So there's different ways to present that to make it land in the lap of the seller with a little less aggression, so to speak.
Grace.
Yeah. Roundhouse kick. Yeah. And sometimes I'll say, these things need to be addressed, or this price reduction if you have a cash offer, or check out seller proceeds to this roofer. Mm-hmm. So people love options. Yeah. Right. Give them options if you can give them options, as long as they work for your client as well. Right.
And, obviously do your best to your limitations and to what is being objected, but to make the seller feel like you're also not just like tearing their house apart and
100%.
Making it feel like they live in a shack. Like,
right. You've got switch plate covers on your inspection objection. 57 cents.
Yeah. Here's a box. I'll run down to Home Depot.
Right.
Hold on. Yeah, I mean, so much of that is psychology of both buyer and seller. And so much of what we do is not what we say, but how we say it, and what relationship, what rapport you've built with the agent across from you. And I think too, being a person that can step outside of your own role and go, cool, if I put my seller hat and I pretend that this is my house, how am I going to receive what I'm asking for? And balancing that with, obviously, our duty is to our buyer in a lot of circumstances, in the same way that in others it's to our seller. And who is it advantageous to give a little so that somebody feels like we win, so that we continue forward in the direction that we're hoping for? What's that? Sorry. Yeah, important.
Yeah, I mean, we want our buyers, as we're talking about representing buyers right now, we want them to feel that we are advocating for them, highly.
Right.
At the same time, the ultimate goal on both sides is to get to the closing table and close. So collaboration is super important, and that comes down to how you finesse things, how you say things, exactly what words you use. I mean, you can write something down. We talk about this all the time in today's world. You text something over, and if somebody who receives the text just had horrible news, is in a grouchy mood, what they hear from you is not going to be, "Hi, would you mind please doing this?" Right? So just mastering those skills to communicate well and make everybody feel like we're a partnership and collaboration. We're not fighting against each other.
Right.
We're trying to accomplish something for a homeowner and a new home buyer,
right?
To advance their lives into something better than what they're doing right now, right? To grow forward.
Right.
So yeah, it's a skill and it's very important.
So let's kind of narrow in on our
Locomotive.
Locomotion.
locomotive.
Start dancing.
Let's narrow in on our local market and what it looks like to work with a local agent. So to you guys both, what do you feel like makes Grand Junction and the broader Grand Valley, whether it's Fruita, Palisade, Orchard Mesa, whatever it may be, unique as a real estate market compared to the variety of other markets that somebody can choose from when they move to Colorado?
So something that's a few things actually, but unique to the Grand Junction market is that when we see trends in other areas, like super slow moving, inventory is this, prices are that, we are always in a different place. We're kind of this surprising little bubble, right? I mean, even during COVID, everybody else it was my biggest year ever.
Mm-hmm.
I sold 80 houses that year. Biggest market. And I hear everywhere else, nobody's even coming out of their house.
Right.
Nothing's happening. We just don't seem to, we get the milder effect of all things that people think are troubling.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely learned to not get over dramatic about those things. We always just seem to plow through somewhat easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think the other piece of that too is when we look at our labor force, I mean, for so long we were an oil and gas town, and we've seen such expansion and diversity in the job markets that keep our real estate market feeling more stable. And to speak again to COVID, I mean, how many people did we get here relocating from larger urban areas that were seeking some peace, honestly, and just and lack of exposure to big scary things that happen in other markets. So we were super fortunate to be insulated from some of the just tumultuous things that other bigger markets experience.
I think like what we were talking about a little bit earlier was that, a lot of people, especially COVID helped with this, but, people notice that you can buy, a $500,000 house here is very different than a $500,000 condo.
I was going to say
in
condo.
Denver.
Condo.
So
one bedroom.
Right. So, that understanding and really, and like I said, COVID really kind of accelerated that idea of like, hey, I've got a $800,000 property in Denver, and it's 4 beds and on less than a quarter of an acre. I can go buy some acreage out in western Colorado and still be able to utilize the lifestyle I enjoy, if not enhanced. Out here we have such a unique outdoor recreation lifestyle. But I think just that idea of like there's more out here for your money than a lot of the other surrounding areas, especially Mountain Town in between us, and then obviously the Front Range. But how do you, when you guys are working with buyers that are talking about that, what are some of the driving factors you guys see that you mentioned, our expanding job market? What are some of the reasons you guys are hearing from your buyers as to why they're relocating or coming from out of state even?
Ryan, Ian, I can speak right back to what you were just saying about COVID and the lifestyle here. I mean, we had a lot of people where this was a vacation destination for them, right? Now it is their life. They live here. Things changed with COVID, opportunities to work from home. So we had a lot of these younger entrepreneurial people who are starting families move out here, where it was very much a retirement community when I first moved here in 2015. And now it is young and vibrant and alive and full of people just experiencing the outdoors, hiking, biking, skiing, all the things. And now they know they can live here, they can work here, and they can live the lifestyle. Right. I think that was a huge change in this community, and it's so vibrant to me now. It just feels so good here.
I think one that was probably really needed too. I mean, I haven't been here long, and I'm not from here originally, but just from the 6 years I have been out here, I think I can speak to the part. I came out here for school for Colorado Mesa University, so really that driving force of the school expanding also brings the light to the community and to this outdoor area and encouraging and having a job market where when a student graduates, there's a spot for them.
Here.
Yeah, for sure. And they're more likely to stay than go back.
Right.
And kudos to everybody over at CMU. I mean, what an incredible educational system they have over there, and constantly driving to make that better. I mean, that is a huge draw to be able to come here and get an excellent education, right? We all think about that with our kids. We want them to have an excellent education. So they can come here, and then what this community is turning into with all this outdoor activity and everything, I mean, it's just become so much more attractive to people.
So what's your advice for relocating buyers who can't easily visit before purchasing? Like we mentioned, we get a lot of people that are moving here from out of state, and so maybe visiting in order to look at homes or go through a slew of homes over the weekend. What is your advice for buyers who can't easily visit before they purchase, and how do you help navigate that?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like knowing your market well, the way that our team does. I mean, we are constantly talking about little corners of the market. We know we get a lot of people from Arizona that move here. We get a lot of folks from Texas, and having worked with people that have already successfully completed a relocation also gives us the ability to have conversations that are more tailored to people that are maybe not here yet, but that's where you're coming from. Right. And we can extrapolate things like, hey, I just worked with this person who said that, these were some aspects of the area that maybe you're relocating from that they gravitated towards or kind of felt like they ran from. I like to create very tailored charts for people, like based on what you've told me you enjoy doing in your free time. I would think this would be a really great place for us to start digging into the market. I think for consultations like that, being an active listener and knowing that it's okay to just ask questions and be quiet and learn somebody deeply while they're getting to learn our area is a huge part of helping people find and try to matchmake before they've really had an opportunity to spend time here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, this is one of the things I love about our team at the Christi Reece Group. We don't just sell real estate. If you get on our website, you look at podcasts that we do, anything we have out on social media, we are showing you the lifestyle here. We have lifestyle videos. Everybody on our team is involved somehow out there. When you get on and you look at all of our stuff, you're not just seeing houses. Mm-hmm. You're learning about this community, how we, contribute through our Circle Fund, what nonprofits out there are doing for our community. I mean, you can just learn so much more about what it means to live in Grand Junction, not just about the market, like buying houses, right? So it's a great place to start here. Right. It's, we provide a lot.
Right. All right. So lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about you guys as agents individually, but, everybody knows a realtor. I think that's kind of the thing is, my mom's best friend's sister's kid is a realtor, that kind of thing. I'm going to use them just because. But when we really look at it, and we hear quite a bit, the difference between a great agent and an average one. What do you guys feel like separates a great agent from an average one? And what should people look for when they're looking for a realtor that maybe they overlook or don't understand they should be looking for?
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate what it is to be a realtor. They think you can just go out, show a property, sell it, and make a buttload of money. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work that way. There's so much responsibility, and I personally don't understand how you can be successful at this job without truly investing yourself into the people that you meet, into their families, into understanding what they truly want, what they're looking for. And you have to be a little bit vulnerable in that respect. You have to let them get to know you as well, because there's this two-way street trust that goes across. It's not about, how do I get them to trust me, right? I need to trust the person I'm working with as well. I want to, be invested in them just like I want them to be invested in me. So it's a full-time job. You're working a lot of hours. You're doing things that you might not think. You might be over, mowing their lawn. They're out of the area, and you're trying to sell their house, and it starts to look a little shabby. And you're getting over there and you're taking care of it, or you're hiring somebody to do it. Whatever you have to do to put their needs, ahead. And sometimes we have to sacrifice some of our own time, but. I mean, there's the basic stuff of knowing the market, right, Christina? Mm-hmm. All that stuff that makes us a great agent, but
that's the standard for everybody.
If you don't do that, you don't belong.
The MLS. Yeah, totally. That's not having the MLS is not a skill.
Yeah,
it's not.
What are you doing to create that connection with those people that keeps them coming back and referring their families and everything? I mean, what are those things that are important to them? And those are all different. I can't sit here and make you a list. This is going to be it. Right. That's why you have to take the time to get to know those people, to find out what's important to them in this particular process.
Right.
Well, and I think too, something because my background, I fixed and flipped 2 homes, and I just built my first house last year. So I think for me, walking into a new community where you go, cool, my water heater went out, to circle back to the question a while back, who do I call? So how do I fill in gaps that you don't even know are gaps yet? Mm-hmm. And connecting yourself with people that have that has resources that bring true value to your time when you actually get here, and you might not even know what that feels like yet.
Right.
But having an agent on your team that not only has great resource connections, but has great relationships with other agents, who you pick and how that person shows up in your transaction across from another agent. You have no idea what that does for your experience in your transaction and the wins that you might be able to secure. I mean, getting I don't want to say feel somebody, that sounds kind of cliche, but truly, like, if that person feels right to you and you get a good read on that person and they're knowledgeable and they have the MLS and all the things that we should be doing, I mean, that's what it's about. You're going to spend a lot of time with your agent, so make sure you like them.
Yeah.
It's just like real estate. I mean, people spend so much time looking for a house and one that works for them and has all the things that they want. It should be, the same type of effort and dedication when you're looking for the person that's going to help you find that house.
Right.
That should be an extension of your personality, of what you're looking for.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and I think, being able to share past experiences that you've had with other people can get out ahead of, oh, what if I need this, or what, tell them something that happened and how you helped. Oh, they needed this one time and we have this and this and this. If you have things that we come across that you might need after closing that we're not thinking about right now, I have a host of resources. We have a Slack channel at work. Everybody has a list. So we will find whoever you need for whatever the cause is, right? So
And honestly, ultimately, we're stress mitigators. How do we do things behind the scenes that make your experience better? And honestly, we'll have your back when you don't know that we do. Right. So picking somebody that's really looking 15, 20 steps ahead and trying to lessen your exposure to the hard stuff. Real estate can be stressful, and that's just by nature of the beast that it is, but that it doesn't have to feel that way all the time.
Right. They're already packing, trying to move, finish school with their kids, all this stuff, and then you got to throw something at them. It's like, if it can be handled without stressing them out with it, handle it.
Yeah.
Tell them about it afterwards.
Yeah.
We had this little hiccup, but I want to let you know I made that phone call, blah, blah, blah. It's already taken care of.
Right.
Oh.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Lunch? No.
Yeah. Totally.
Always.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this segment. This has been incredibly, useful, and I think our audience will find a lot of resource from it, even if there's just one nugget that they can take from it. So that's a wrap on our episode of The Inner Circle. A huge thank you to Karen and Christina. Thank you guys so much for sitting down and sharing your time and knowledge. If you have questions that you'd like answered, whether it's about real estate, finding an agent, understanding the market, all the things that we just talked about, you can reach out to us at marketing@christyreece.com. Send us your questions. You can also leave any comments on this episode that you'll find on YouTube or social media, or give our agents a call. You can call our office at 970-589-7700. We would love to help you out, as well as get you on the right path. So from all of us here at the Christi Reece Group, thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening. This is Christi Reece signing out from the Full Circle Podcast.